Hello everybody, VG time back again with another deck profile. If you watch my live stream, you know that I've been trying to work towards building the Shenron Black Shadow Dragon archetype. After some playtesting, I came down to some ratios that I believe is fairly solid, and I believe it's good enough to at least give you a starter deck profile that you could build from. So let's just look and see what we got so far. So this is going to take a little while, a lot of new cards. I want to make sure I thoroughly explain what these cards do, and also want to explain why a particular card is not in the deck. And hopefully by going through all that, you'll be able to appreciate what's going on. I will have timestamps down below if you don't want to go through all that. If you just want to see the whole deck laid out, I don't blame you. This is going to take, you know, a good chunk of time. So Shenron, this one is a very unique leader in that it has permanent blocker on it. So, well, it has a blocker keyword on it. First thing, it has an auto that says that when you activate a Shadow Dragon extra card, you get to mill one card for your opponent and yourself. That contributes to its self-awakening ability. And then it has an auto, when you swing, you discard a card first, then you draw a card, which further contributes to its self-awakening. And then at the end of the turn, you restand it, which then allows you to use this blocker ability. Then awakening condition is either you have 7 or more Black Shadow Dragon cards in your drop, or you have 4 or less life, in which case you get to untap one and draw one and flip them over. On the back side, he has blocker still. He has a similar auto as the front side. When you activate a Shadow Dragon extra card, in this side, only your opponent mills. And then on swing, he becomes a 20k beater that also restands at the end of the turn, so you can activate his blocker. Lastly, and the most important thing, is that he has a Spirit Boost ability that's an activate main/battle once per turn that allows you to activate the activate main/battle on the Shadow Dragon extra cards without having to pay their energy. So there's a lot of great things going with this leader. Self-awakening, a backup win condition, free cards, all that stuff is good. Next up, we're going to talk about the unison. The unison for the deck is this Toa. At first, I kind of thought she wasn't really that good, but she's actually a pretty healthy card. The reason being is that she gets to a size that makes sure your opponent doesn't necessarily want to focus on it too hard. Plus, this deck, even if your opponent focuses on it really hard, can play without the unison, but having the unison just makes everything a little cheaper. She has an auto that says when your leader card activates blocker, you mill a card and then you add a marker to her. Her +1 allows you to draw a card from your deck, take a card from your hand, and up to 3 Shadow Dragon extra cards in your drop, and put them at the bottom of your deck in any order. And then the -7 is similar to the original Shenron leader. But it's a little different. You get to choose 7 Shadow Dragons with different character names, up to 7 Shadow Dragons with different character names from your hand or your drop and put them into play. So what that tells me is that they're going to finish out the rest of the chains, you know, Rage Shenron, all that kind of stuff, later on, maybe the next couple of sets. So if you're looking for a deck that, if you wanted to invest in it, will be supported over the next couple of sets, this would be the deck that you would choose. Next up, we have our extra cards. So we're going to start with Negative Energy Explosion. All these have a permanent that says that they have the Shadow Dragon trait, which is pretty important because of how the Shadow Dragon battle cards work. Also makes it so that they're targets for Toa's abilities and so forth. They all have an activate main/battle that is limit 1, which means you're going to activate 1 copy of the card for the turn. In the case of this card, you get to look at the top 7 cards of your deck and add either Shadow Dragon extra card to your hand, or if you don't have the unison in play the unison with a marker on it, and it has to be specifically this unison. Next up is a card that I think a lot of people misunderstand. It's a great card in my opinion, but it took me a while to appreciate it. Ultimate Whirlwind Spin. So this one searches the top 5 for a Black Shadow Dragon. It does not care what size it is. So that's the first thing that makes it great. But then once you add that card to your hand, you can choose to discard a card from your hand. And if you do, you give your leader plus 1,000. So when I first read that, and it's for the turn, plus 1,000 for the turn. When I first read that, I thought it was really, really bad. But now that I think about how the math of the game works, for the most part, everything works in fives. So usually the battle cards are 5K, 10K, 15K, 20K. If you're on the front side and they're swinging with 10Ks, being 11 is equivalent to being 15. If you're on the back side and they're swinging with 15, being 16 is equivalent to being 20. Of course, there's differences in the rules. Like if they have 16K battle cards, 19Ks, that matters. But for the most part, it does the job. We have Ultimate Dragon Quake next. This right here is similar to Max Power Kamehameha. It warps a battle card with greater cost than your opponent's current energy. Difference is it comes back into play at the end of the turn. But if your opponent has 15 or less cards in their deck, it puts it to the drop area instead of put it back into play at the end of the turn. And when it comes back into play at the end of the turn, it's with its skills negated. So this is very powerful against decks that burst themselves. You might be able to incidentally mill people down to that point, but the likelihood of that is pretty low. But it's punishing to the decks that do burst themselves and play out big dumb creatures with their effects. And lastly, my favorite one, Ultimate Dragon Tackle. So Ultimate Dragon Tackle makes it so that your opponent has to make a choice. So you activate this, your opponent mills a card from the top of their deck, then they may choose to remove 2 markers from their unison. If they don't, you get to choose one of their battle cards and send it to the warp and draw a card. So first card, I'm not running. People are going to ask me, well, what about this card? Ultimate Dark Dragon Slaying Bullet. This card says a whole lot of things, none of which are relevant. And let me explain why. So to read the card, it says, if your opponent is playing a unison card as a counterplay, this counterplay, they may either remove a marker from it for every 2 cards in their drop area and warp, or place it in their drop area instead of playing it. If they don't, your opponent can only attack 1 more time for the turn. So first problem is it has a counterplay of unison. So unisons are typically played on turn 1, turn 2. Rare cases, turn 3, turn 4. Like if you're going against blue and like they have the Majibu unison. So your window to actually play this card is very slim. Secondly, the ability that requires them, the ability for them to either remove markers or send it to the drop is optional to your opponent. Your opponent could just choose not to do that. And the side effect to them choosing not to do that is that they only get to attack 1 more time for the turn. So if your opponent at all knows this card exists, they would just attack with a bunch of things first, play their unison, and you'll be like, ha, they go, okay, yeah, I just attack 1 more time for the turn. And then this card literally did nothing but mill 1 card from them due to the leader effect. So then people bring up the activate Bane/battle, and even that is an opponent's choice. They get to choose the battle card, and because they get to choose the battle card, they could choose some incidental card that don't matter. So in both of these cases in this card, your opponent has all the choice and all the power. And that is the reason why I don't think that card is really that good or that relevant. Maybe I'm wrong, but every time I played it, it just seems like it never did anything. So next we're going to the battle cards. Hey Shenron, Power of Darkness. This card right here is a great cost reduction engine. So first of all the Shadow Dragon battle cards have the ability that if they are played or sent to the drop due to a Shadow Dragon skill, you get to reveal the top card of your deck And if it's a Shadow Dragon, Black Shadow Dragon, you add it to your hand. And if it's not, you put it to the bottom of your deck. So I'm not going to bring that skill up for the rest of these cards. Just know that that skill exists. His activate main allows you to pay black, switch from the rest mode, and play a 3-cost. Let's see, let me make sure I read this. 1 black Shadow Dragon card would cost 3 or less from your hand. So that's already good right there. As long as you're playing something that costs 2 or higher, like 3 or 2 or 3, is already saving you energy. Primary target is this guy right here, and arguably the best battle card in the deck is this Shenron. So he has the ability, he's critical and blocker. When he swings, he gets to warp one of your opponent's battle cards. Has no restriction on it except for, of course, barrier, because you just have to choose it. But you just swing, warp one of their battle cards, and then at the end of the turn, you restand them so that you can still use them for his blocker ability. Next up, we're going to look at the Shenrons I play. We're talking about 4 copies of the promo Shenron. This card is important because the activate main / battle is the same as your leaders. So that allows you to be able to play multiple Shadow Dragon extra cards from your hand during that turn. But remember, they all have limit 1, so you can only activate 1 copy of each per turn. Then the next one is a card that I have a great love for because it allows me to feel some kind of way. So this guy right here says that if your opponent is a black Shadow Dragon and you activate Spirit Boost, you can pay black and put him into play. He is a 20k double striker. We already discussed what the Shadow Dragon ability is. So you get to reveal the top card if it's a black Shadow Dragon, you add it to your hand. This guy is basically Tapion. He is basically the 4-drop Tapion, except for he's far less restrictive than the 4-drop Tapion is. The only thing that requires your leader, Spirit Boost. Doesn't care what kind of unison it is or what color the unison is. It just has to be Spirit Boost and you have the black to pay for it. Next up, we have Naturon Shenron. This guy right here is another sorcery removal. Basically, when he comes into play, he chooses one of your opponent's battle cards with cost 5 or less. Could do it from the battle area or even from the drop area and put it underneath the card, and then you get to copy one of the card's keyword skills into the end of your opponent's next turn. So this allows you to get things like double strike, barrier, dual attack, revenge, whatever is going on your opponent's deck. Next up, we have Oceanus Shenron. Let's put it right here for now. This is your primary negate for the deck. This has a counter skill that you get to pitch a card from your hand, and for the rest of your turn, your opponent has to mill 4 if they want to attack with a battle card. So it's basically like a topo. Only requirement is as your opponent's turn for this thing to cost 2. So it's hella generic. In this deck, though, it's the most benefit because it has the typical Shadow Dragon ability, so it can replace itself. And if you pitch any of the Shadow Dragon battle cards, it also replaces the card that you pitched. So that's what makes it great. Then it's also a blocker, so you could guarantee that even if your opponent wanted to push through it, they're going to lose quite a few cards from the top of their deck. Next up, we have 4 copies of the Oceanus Super Combo. This right here, your typical Sparking 5, and it goes with the cycle where if you activate Spirit Boost, you get to put this underneath your unison and add a marker to your unison. Then for the ultimate, we have the Shenron Corrupted by the Darkness. This right here is also a black Shadow Dragon. So you get to get it off of Whirlwind, and you also get to reveal it off of one of the battle cards and add it to your hand. Then, non-black card, 2 copies of Haze Shenron of Venomous Mist. So shout out to the homie Cruz over at the Chamber DBS. I'll try to remember to leave a link for his channel down in the description. He brought up how this card right here works really well with the deck because it has no restrictions on it. That besides what kind of card it could pitch and the name of the card that it could go on. So it doesn't require your leader to be a yellow shadow dragon. It doesn't require you to pitch yellow shadow dragons, and it doesn't require the Haze Shenron it evolves on to be a yellow shadow dragon. Just as a refresher, it has the X evolve on a 3-cost Haze Shenron, which we do run in our deck. And when you evolve it, it restands it. So it gives you a lot of aggro pressure since it's a 20 double striker. Then it has an auto that says when you combo with the card or attack with the card, you could pitch a shadow dragon from your hand. If you do, you choose one of your opponent's battle cards in rest mode where it costs greater than or equal to their energy and KO it. So in this deck, you're usually wanting to pitch one of these guys. And if you do, you get to replace the card. I say one of these cards, guys, and I take and point at everything, but it's not this one. So everything but the super combo and the ultimate you could replace a card with. And then lastly, we have 2 copies of Protector of the People. This is more so a meta call. You want to have some chance if your opponent is playing something hyper aggressive and you're going second to be able to stave it off. So that's what my choice is, to be able to play this and hopefully stack up enough 5s to make my opponent pass a turn and hopefully stabilize. So that is where my deck is at now. Another card that I am not playing that you might be wondering about is the quote-unquote boss monster, the 4-drop Shenron. That card is arguably good. Problem is I have to pay 4 for it. I want to have energy up just in case the unison goes away. So I'd rather be playing things for 1 energy in the case of these guys, or have energy up to activate the battle cards in case I don't have the unison. He has the activate main / battle. That's the same as your leader in this 1-drop Shenron. And because we already have those effects on these guys, we really don't have to have the effect on him. And of course, when he does it, he restands, so he could double block or he could double attack, which is why he's pretty good. He also has barrier, which gives you an out against green. So I could see this being side decked. So you could just play this into a charismatic villain and not care. But otherwise, I don't really see a reason for him against most decks when you could be doing things for cheap. So that is it for the deck profile. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Again, this is a good starting point. If you really want to experiment, you could add a lot more yellow to the deck. And you could do things like play this guy, get a couple attacks in, and then pay yellow and evolve the 9-drop on top of him. And then you have a floodgate. You could do all kinds of cool stuff if you really applied yourself with this deck. It does hurt consistency to a certain degree, but I think there's just a lot of room to play with this deck, a lot of openings that you could take. So that is it, and this is VG Time signing out.